All right, let's get started. So hello, thank you for attending the last session. My name is Sander, and I'll be talking about Drupal 8 theming in a nutshell. So I have 40 minutes to learn you a little bit about Drupal 8 and theming. In your brochure, it says like front-end, and it's actually a front-end design session, not really site building like it says in the brochure. And so, hey, my name is Sander. I'm SQNDR on V.O, and I work for a company called One Agency, and we are located in the industry park in Hasselt, but we also have an office in Ghent. If you're looking for a new opportunity, we're always looking for Drupal talent, so make sure to come to me or talk to any of my colleagues. Some of them are here, and we also have a booth. And when I started out I was a student, so it's very weird for me to be here because I was sitting in those seats like a few years ago. This is where I went to college. And I started out with Drupal 7, started doing some Drupal work, and then I came into Drupal 8. I was really interested in core and I wanted to do some development myself. And I figured that there was no documentation, so I figured like, hey, I'll just do it myself. And so it's available on d8.sqndr.com. There's a whole theming guide. It explains you how things work. And so yeah, it's available there for free. If you go to URL, you'll see a full website. And so Drupal 8 will be released on the 19th of November if everything goes according to plan. And so you will get the theming guide, you will get a whole book instead of just the website, so you can read it on your iPad when you're on a vacation to celebrate Drupal 8. This is sort of a more practical session. If you went to a Laureate session, that was more of the backend talk, really interesting talk. So if you're interested in the backend of how things work, make sure to check out Laureate's great session. Take your time machine and go and see it. Throughout the presentation, Drupal.org is just G.O is just Drupal.org. And so basically Drupal 8 in a nutshell, but that nutshell really is a pistachio. So the Twig initiative, and including myself, we have been working on an example theme to kind of show you all of the awesomeness that is available in Drupal 8 core. If you're familiar with Drupal 7, and maybe just a quick show of hands who have done some Drupal 7 theming. All right, so most of you, really cool. If you get started with Drupal 8, one of the things that might be really confusing is that when you download Drupal 8, you see folder themes here, and if you're familiar with Drupal 7, you might want to go into like sites, all, themes, custom, and create a theme there. But kind of like the heart of Drupal 8 now lives in a folder called core. So all of the core themes, which are Bartik, 7, and Stark, they live inside core themes. And so if you want to create a theme, just do that in this themes folder. So you don't have to go into sites, all, and all that crap. Just do it in themes. It's kind of like making everything more intuitive and kind of more simple. And inside core, if you go into core modules, these modules, they're not supposed to have any CSS classes. All of that has kind of been removed, except for some JS classes. They're there for doing some JavaScript things. And it basically shows you like, don't remove these classes because you lose some functionality. And so what we have now in Drupal 8 are two base themes that are in core, and one of them is called Classy. And Classy kind of comes out, it was a result of a survey that they did in DrupalCon Austin, and they basically asked front-end developers like, what do you think of Drupal 7? What are your frustrations? And as you know, Drupal 7 provides you with this whole bunch of markup, this whole bunch of CSS classes, so much divs, field items, field, all those divs. And so they basically asked, like, what do you like it? Do you dislike it? And the result of the survey was kind of like 2/3 of the camps said, like, well, we kind of like that, but we want it to be improved. Definitely, it should be improved using better standards. But we like it because then whenever we get like we can just click in the interface and we can just start writing CSS, and we don't have to write any HTML. It'll just work. We can just start theming. And 1/3 of the camps are like, no, we absolutely dislike it. we want to have full control over the markup. We want to be able to change everything. Because if you're familiar with Drupal 7 and you have to remove everything. You can't just say like, okay, I want this, you just get it, and if you don't want it, you have to remove it all by yourself. So that is why everyone's probably using a base team such as Omega or maybe like Mothership to kind of undo everything that Drupal does. And in Drupal 8, you don't need that anymore because you can kind of say like, okay, I want Drupal to provide me with all of this markup, all of these classes, or I don't want Drupal to provide me with all of this markup. And so if you want all of the markup, use Classy as a base team. And there's more information on the whole consensus that was made in the theming guide. It explains kind of like how they came to that decision. And there's, since the release candidate, there's also a new base team. I won't go into detail about that, but it's basically in there for backwards compatibility. And if you don't define a base team in your info file of your theme, you will be using stable by default. And if you really know what you're doing, you can set the base team to none, and then you won't have this, so you won't be using stable. All right. And so this is sort of an overview of how of the Drupal core themes. So you have 7 and Bartik, 7 the default administration theme. You have Bartik, the default frontend team, and they both use Classy as a base theme. Then there is Stark and Stable, and Stark basically shows you the Drupal core default markup. There is a big issue right now because all of the Drupal core now doesn't ship with template files that contain CSS classes. It's sort of like the minimal markup so that you can have Classy. And then Classy can provide you with CSS classes and default CSS styling, and then Bartik and 7, they kind of add like the Drupal layer on top of that. But right now it's not possible for modules to kind of say like, hey, okay, I have a template file and this is the minimal file, and if you're using Classy, this is sort of like, this is sort of the Classy file. So there is right now a discussion to make it possible so that so that contrib can kind of say like, okay, this is my minimal default file and this is kind of my Classy kind of style. Because if you're writing a module, you of course want to provide some classes and markup to add something to your theme. All right. Oh, something happened with the mic. Hello. Did I? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think so. All right. So we'll go on. So next, Drupal has done some really great work in terms of like responsiveness and like, as you might have heard, Drupal is out of the box responsive. Oh, great, cool, thanks. So Drupal is out of the box responsive, and one of those things is like, if you have a theme, Drupal will automatically search for a logo.svg instead of like a PNG, so kind of great. The markup in Drupal core is also like HTML5 ready, so that means cool things like header, footer, all that kind of HTML5 awesomeness. And also CSS tree. What that means is like in Drupal 7 you have classes that were in there, like first, last, odd, even, all of those classes, and they were basically in there because Drupal was supporting IE6, IE7, IE8, and you couldn't target those items. You really needed, yeah, all right. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So you really needed those classes because you couldn't target those items in CSS, but with CSS 3 you can just do that. And if you're familiar with Drupal 7, you might have saw some horrible things, theme functions. Well, in Drupal 8 they're gone, they have been removed. So awesome comment by WebCheck, like die, theme function, die. And Drupal 8, so as I mentioned, people, like 2/3 of the camp at DrupalCon Austin, they agreed like, okay, we want Drupal to provide us with good markup, with good CSS classes. And so the Drupal 8 coding standards are based on 2 key elements, and one of them is called SMACSS. You might have heard of that. Well, I hope you've heard of that guy. SMACSS is now part of the Drupal 8 coding standards, and it's basically a way of organizing your CSS file use. So a CSS file can be in any of those 5 categories. It can be base styling, layout styling, component styling, state styling, or theme styling. You can read more on the coding standards at the link. And so you kind of have to say, whenever you include a CSS file, this is the SMACSS category that this CSS file belongs to. And the Drupal 8 coding standards are also based on BAM. And that stands for Block Element Modifier. And it's basically a CSS class name convention. And also, again, you can read more on that, because this is kind of the nutshell. I myself am working on a sort of conjure project with like Gulp and Bauer and all that kind of stuff. It's called PANDA. It's a PANDA theme. It kind of looks something like this. And so whenever you want to get started and whenever you want to create a Drupal 8 theme, all themes and modules in Drupal 8, they have a new metadata format, and it's called an info.yml file. It comes from the Symfony framework. And so if we take a look at Pistachio, this is kind of like how an info.yml file works. So kind of like how, this is kind of what it looks like. So for a theme, you have to define the type theme, because Drupal will scan for all these files. So you have to tell Drupal like, hey, this is a theme. And so in here, I also define like base theme classes, so that will make sure that in my theme, I will have all of the classes and I will include all of the templates that are in the classy theme. So I don't have to add any CSS classes if I just like the classes that are in classy. But I can still override those classes, of course. And yeah, one of the like nifty features is that you can have like a screenshot. It can now be an animated GIF. Super cool. And so whenever you're creating a theme, you have 2 options. You can kind of say like, hey, I want all of the Drupal markup to be there. So you define base theme classy. And then you have another theme. You have front-end developers like Lori, and they hate Drupal core theme, and they say like, no, I want a kitten theme, and I want to do everything myself. So you name your theme kitten. You don't define base theme. You will, however, be using stable, but don't worry about that. And then, yeah, you can do anything you want. The other tag was regions. So these are the default regions. If you don't define the regions in your info file, these are the default regions that you'll get. And then a big question comes up. All right, I'm a front-end developer, and I want to include some assets. I want to include CSS and JavaScript. So a question comes up, how do I add CSS or JavaScript? And the answer to that is libraries. And libraries are one uniformly applied system for both modules and themes. And basically the whole goal of libraries is to only load what you need when you need it. That's kind of the whole point. And with things coming up like HTTP2, something like that will be it will improve how this whole concept worked. So we're kind of future ready. So the whole goal of the libraries thing is to only load what you need when you need it. Instead of saying like, hey, this is all my CSS, this is all my JavaScript included on every page, include jQuery on every page, include all my plugins on every page. Instead, what we're doing now is a approach where you say like, hey, on this page, I need this plugin from jQuery. So include jQuery, include the plugin, and Drupal will kind of solve all the dependencies for you and include it on that page only. So it will only load it when you need it. How does this whole libraries thing work? Well, very easily. First up, you create a library. And when you create a library, it is done in your root, and you create a libraries.yml file. And you just use the key, a version. And again, here we see I've marked base and component as sort of the keys. And so those are sort of that's the SMACSS guy again. So these are the SMACSS categories the styling belongs to. And it's not just for fun. You don't add them there for fun. Drupal actually takes those into account in the loading order. So that means that all of the base styling from modules comes first, then all of the layout styling from modules, then all of the component styling from modules, then all of the state styling from modules, and then all the theme styling. And then the Drupal themes come up. And so all the base stylings from your theme will be loaded then. And if you have a base theme, Drupal will make sure that the base styling from the base theme is loaded first, and then from your custom theme. So Drupal is, so it's there for a reason, so that you don't need important, because you can just override it and the latest used selector will be used. And here I have another example. So I have a library for, say I want special styling on a node. I have a library for theming my node, so I have a component CSS file, the node.css. I have a JavaScript file for nodes, so I define it in the libraries file. And then I tell Drupal like, hey, I have a dependency for this library on core jQuery. So this script requires jQuery to run. And if you're using Drupal behaviors, you also need the core Drupal library in order to use the Drupal behaviors. Because Drupal is only loading what you need when you need it. So jQuery by default is not included on all pages. So, and you don't need jQuery update anymore, hopefully, because, well, Drupal will provide you with updates on jQuery and all of its front-end libraries in core. And if you really like this, you can kind of do the same thing in Drupal 7, since I don't know which version, but you can read on it in the change record. So we've created a library. We've created two, like one which is CSS and one for nodes. Now we have to add the library. And so how you can do that is go to your example.info.yml file. So you go to your metadata file, and you just say libraries, and then you define the libraries. But this means that those libraries, they will be loaded on all pages. Yeah, kind of like, again, not really what we want, but I'll come back to that later. So that is one way of including a library. Another way of doing that is including it in a .theme file, and that is kind of where like PHP logic lives. So kind of like who pre-process things, they live in there. And so in Drupal 7 it was called template.php, and now it's just called your theme name and then .theme. And so in there you just use an attached, and then you can add a library using PHP. But again, if you went to Laurie's talk, you heard that the theme layer got simplified, and we tried to make it better for front-end developers to work with Drupal. And so now we're saying like, hey, if you want to attach a library, again, here is PHP. And so we're like, yeah, nah, not really what we want. So how can we improve this and make it a better front-end experience? Well, let's just include the library from a template file, because that's kind of where front-end people like to work, just in HTML files. So you can use this function, attach library, and then just the name of the library. So example is the name of the theme, and then slash the name of the library. And so that way I can just include a library directly from a template file. So that means that, okay, I attach the library, so the library, the node library. So what Drupal will then do is make sure that jQuery is loaded, make sure that the Drupal behaviors are loaded, the Drupal JavaScript. It will make sure that the CSS file is loaded, and it will then also load my custom JavaScript. And it will make sure that the loading order is also correct. So again, you can just be lazy. Drupal will do all of the magic for you. And what about external libraries? Well, you can just include those as well directly from your info file. So say I have a Google font that I want to use. I just set that key there. You can kind of see it at the end, like external true, and that will make sure, that will kind of tell Drupal like, hey, this is an external file. And so in my global styling here in the example, I just set a dependency to like, to that library, and that will make sure that the Google font is loaded first, and then kind of all of my styling in there. So kind of my Google font depends on the base. Right, and so for kind of styling or JavaScript that you want to be loaded on all pages, in Drupal core we use kind of those library names like global styling and global script, kind of to tell you like, hey, these are the things loaded on all pages. And you can kind of, libraries are really the part to get your head around if you're working with Drupal 8. And you can do many things with libraries as well. You can, in your theme, remove files from a library, you can replace files, you can replace an entire library, or you can remove an entire library. And these are some quick examples, like you can remove a file from a library just by saying like, okay, this is in your info file, you said libraries overwrite, then the name of the library, then again you say CSS, the name of the SMACSS category, and then the CSS file you want to overwrite, and you just set it to false. If you want to override that file with a file of your own, you just say like, okay, that's the file where it used to be at, but use this file instead. You can also replace an entire library by using this, or you can set it to false and kind of remove, kind of remove the entire library. And also you can extend libraries, like if you want to extend a library from Drupal core or from a module, this is the way to go, libraries extend. And when you're extending a library, so I say here libraries extend classing message, so I want the library, the classing messages library, to be loaded, and I want to add some additional, maybe CSS. So load that in, and it will load under the same circumstances. So if the classing messages, if that library is conditionally loaded, my library will be loaded under the same conditions. And then I think 2 or 3 days ago, I saw this question on Twitter, like someone asking like, how granular should I go? 1 library per theme, 1 per template, 1 per style guide element, sort of what's the best practice? And so right now, sort of still the best practice is to make an individual library for a template that is rarely loaded or for an expensive JavaScript file. Because, yeah, kind of another talk really, but how the web works now, it's just really hard to load what you need when you need it. But so we're ready for the future. And so one of the questions was, how do I add CSS and how do I add JavaScript? And so now, how can I change the markup? Well, to change the markup and know where markup comes from, a really cool feature in Drupal 8 is called Twig debug. And so you go to sites default services YAML, and you see a parameter debug. It's originally set to false. You just change that to true, and then when you go to your Drupal 8 frontend, you see all of those awesome HTML comments in your, if you kind of like inspect element, the console, so you kind of like see where a template file comes from. And this is also available in Drupal 7. Most people don't know, so you can just enable it in Drupal 7 as well. And so if you want to override the markup, you just enable Twig debug, you find, oh, this is where the markup comes from. You copy that template, it shows you the full path to that template file. You kind of copy that template in your theme, you paste it in your theme, and you change the markup. And all of those template files live in a folder called templates. So templates, both Drupal core modules and Drupal core themes, they have a folder called templates, and that's where all the markups live. So kind of like, it's kind of like the practice. But you can use subdirectories. It will recursively scan for template files. So much awesomeness in Drupal 8. And so there's much more. There's Twig. Using Twig, you can simply print a variable just by using a name. You can print an attribute from the variable, like page.content, and you don't have to worry about what is happening in the backend. Again, that's kind of what Laurie was talking about. So you don't have to worry about what it's doing in the PHP backend. And you can like use if statements. It's fully multilingual. And there's even more. So there's breakpoints. So you can define breakpoints in your theme. And you have a responsive image module. And using that module, you can kind of like create image styles depending on the breakpoint you're on, or if you're using a retina screen or not. And this is sort of the end. This is sort of the Drupal 8 theming in a nutshell. So I'll be uploading the slides from the session on the Drupal camp session page. And make sure if you're interested and you want to get started with Drupal 8, make sure to download the Pistachio theme. So the Pistachio theme is, as I mentioned before, it's basically made by the Twig initiative. And we basically show you how everything works in Drupal 8 by just showing you code examples. And in those code examples, we have links to the change record so that you can read more on why it has changed and how to use it. And also, yeah, keep an eye on the theming guide if you are interested and you wanna know more. You wanna get started with Drupal 8. Make sure to check the guide. And so then this is kind of the end. So time for questions. All right. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have just one notification that you showed the picture of stable and classy and stuff. So right now, all the core teams are extending classy like R6 and 7, but also the classy is going to be extending stable and stuff.
All right.
So because we want classy to be also PC compatible. So they are not extending right now stable, but classy is going to be extending stable, so that they are in the future they are all going to be extending stable.
All right. So just for the recordings that's going on. So what Laurie mentioned is that classy will be extending from stable so that classy is providing backwards compatibility as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any questions? Maybe a quick show of hands who has done any Drupal 8 theming? All right. Everyone excited to use it? Or yeah? All right. Yeah. Questions? Yeah. All right. All right. So yeah, there's lots of information, and you can always find me. It's @sqndr. I'll quickly slide back to the end. Yeah, kind of not possible to do that quickly. Okay, but anyway, thanks for coming, and yeah, have a great Drupal camp and enjoy the tapas bar. Thanks.